Oh, sorry. Got to the end of the 3-2-1. Didn't realize it. Hello, class. English class 6385 or 6115. I think 6385. The young adult class. I'm here to discuss my topic for my vlog. I'm not sure it. I see myself. Put my hand up here in the bottom right, but to me it looks like a ghost. I can see through me, so I don't know how clear it is, but I'm pretty sure this house is haunted. I hear crazy stuff. I got a cat that freaks out, which cats tend to do anyways. But so a ghost of me really kind of fits the scenario anyways. But here's what I really found interesting reading these two books. And I found a billion things interesting. But one thing I really liked was the fact that that Auggie and Caitlin have this defense, this not natural defense, almost a conditioned defense against bullying. If you go back and look at it, and as I put in my argument right there, due to their, of course, I didn't put the right, so I'm going to restart. Due to their perceived disabilities, both Auggie and Caitlin are the subjects of bullying in the text. However, it's their ability to cope with what is seen by others as a weakness that actually makes them immune to the aggressive actions of the bully. This idea of self-preservation that is taught through years of dealing with their disability proves to be quite different than other forms of young adult lit that we've read, such as the examples which Jen discusses in her article. Both Auggie and Caitlin stand out from the others, as the thing that makes them appear abnormal also makes them invulnerable to the bully's acts. That's what I really, it kind of kicked in with Caitlin for me more, but I'll talk about her second. But both Caitlin and Auggie, they had this great way about them of, which is a conditioned thing. I mean, they've been, in a way, conditioned to deal with this. As I'll go through each character, and then some comparison with what Jen Kerwood's book she talks about does, or the characters do. But they've really kind of been conditioned. So other people around them, when a bully situation occurs, they respond to the bully the way almost not you're supposed to, but is perceived as maybe normal. And this goes against this whole binary thing we've been talking about, right? Because you got the abnormal and you got the normal. So even their reactions are abnormal, but it's a protective way. So their attitudes, both of them conditioned, because I mean Auggie's been dealing with this forever, and Caitlin has too, and they've learned how to just get through it. And I know there's people having arguments already, but I'm going to explain that in a second. That fact they've been able to do it, it makes them invulnerable to the bully. The bully can't deal. So to begin with, to kick this off, I'm going to get my handy notes here, which brightens up my pretty face a little bit more. See, what I like about Auggie is with Julian, I mean, in each case, you pretty much have the heavy-handed bully. Now, there are other people who have situations, but there's specific people in both texts that are seen as bullies. For Auggie, it's certainly Julian. On page 29, when they first meet, they're first walking around, Julian asks him about his face and if it was burned. Auggie remarks, the question that Julian asked actually made him smile. He says, sometimes when I have a feeling like when I have the feeling like I'm almost crying, it can turn into an almost laughing feeling. And that must have been the feeling I was having then, because I smiled. When the Darth Sidious reference comes, and I won't go too deep into Darth Sidious because I'm sure nobody really wants me to do that. I'm pretty sure I already did that before in the discussion post. But when Julian, Auggie knows that Julian did the reference to kind of like, to pick on him. But Auggie doesn't let other people see it from what we see in the text, because Jack Will keeps talking about his thing. Julia knows and Auggie knows, but he does react. I know he does, but he does it at home. He doesn't react in front of the bully or the person causing the problem, and that's a continued thing that happens throughout the text. Another time on page 208, this is when Jack and Auggie have gotten buddies, and they retaliate against Julian's notes of freak and get out of school org by making up the fake girl, which was hilarious, and putting letters in Julian's locker about how much she wanted to do gross things because she loved him so much. So that's another instance of them dealing with this bullying situation by just not even remotely buying into it. I mean, look at what happens to Jack. Jack's not being bullied. Augie's being bullied by Julian earlier on, and Jack just knocks him out, man. Just pops him right in the nose. Granted, I'm sure a bully doesn't want that to occur, but that's more of a natural reaction, which gets Jack into trouble. But Augie doesn't do any of that stuff. Augie just goes with it, man. He doesn't let it bite into him, nothing. Like for instance, the plague. He finds out about the plague, and he just wonders why they didn't cause it the cheese touch from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And later on page 178, Augie even jokes that, you know what, the plague sounds much better. Like someone could catch the Black Death of ugliness, which is hilarious. And I talked about Jack Will, kind of reacting in a negative way to the bully or to Julian, but later on, Jack Will does kind of change because on page 209, Julian, I think it's the Maxes, they steal Jack Will's shorts and Jim, and Jack Will just doesn't let him affect him. And Auggie actually says, he was good about this stuff. He never let them see he was upset, though I think sometimes he was. So Augie's already learned that that's how you deal with it. That's the good about it. That's how he dealt with it. That's positive. He didn't let him see him do it. So a couple more, because I'm already at 6 minutes. On page 266, when he's assaulted by the 7th graders, the big 7th graders, Augie remains calm and just tries to stop the situation. So does Jack Will. It's Amos that spears Eddie, right? So Augie remains cool through the whole time. There's a ton more, but I'm running low on time. So I will say that, just trying to see anything I should pull up. And they joke about it a lot. They talk about how, Jack and Augie talk about how, is it weird that the guy said whoa to you, the big guy that walking down the stairs, and Augie's like, nah, I probably would fight him, I guess, maybe. And Jack's like, well, the best way to do it is if you had like these things that could shoot green slime or dog pee in their eyes, which is a little bit dangerous, I guess. But it's a funny way of dealing with it. And then Augie, they even joke about the plastic surgery and how he should sue the surgeon. And Augie has one of the best lines about this. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, he says on page, hey, the truth is if a Wookiee started going to the school all of a sudden, I'd be curious. I'd probably stare a bit. And if I was walking with Jack or Summer, I'd probably whisper to them too. And if the Wookiee caught me saying that, he'd know I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just pointing out the fact that he's a Wookiee. So kind of gets that, right? So I got a ton of them, but I'm already at like 8 minutes. So I'm going to skip to Caitlin. Now, Caitlin is cool. Like, I love Caitlin. But she stands up. The best example of her is obviously Josh, right? Because Josh, he's got a lot of problems. I mean, Josh got a lot of issues, with what was his brother that was involved in the shooting and all that. But real quickly, on page 28, Caitlin talks about Josh is walking towards me and he's smiling even though he runs into William H's personal space and knocks him down. You shouldn't walk into someone else's personal space, especially not William H. William H is autistic. And then she says about how now he's screaming loud and the lady who helps him tries to get him up, but William is kicking too much. Josh has a big, grinny smile on his face. You shouldn't smile when you do something bad because a smile is supposed to mean you're being nice. I wish people would follow the facial expression charts they're supposed to. So it's right up to Josh and stands on his toes and starts talking to him about you need to deal with the personal space. You need to understand the personal space and how to respect it. And he's freaking out. So the bully is totally freaking out. And she's up in his face explaining things in her mind the way it's supposed to be done. She doesn't get it. She doesn't get that this is a factor that she should be afraid of because fear doesn't factor into that at all. A couple other instances with Caitlin as well. On page 182, when Mr. Mason makes the comment about how he gets all the autistic kids, Caitlin I'm sorry, the other girls actually grab Caitlin and take her outside and report her to Miss Brooke. Uh, this in turn makes the bully, who's Mr. Mason, end up wearing that yellow penny, which I ain't even got a clue what that thing is, but supposedly it looks pretty funny. But what's cool about that is when he's talking about the autistic kids, Caitlin's just trying to figure out who the other autistic kids are he's talking about. She doesn't even pick up that it's a joke on her. Later on, page 208, Caitlin attacks Josh again because she sees him pulling on, is it Michael, on the bars, the climbing bars, and so she goes up and just like gets all over him. I believe she knocks him to the ground even. So sorry, I don't know if that blacked out. It may have. My computer screen went dead for a second. So you get that instance of the bully's now afraid of her, totally afraid in that whole situation. There's another one, page 1. Caitlin's trying to be friends with the girls, and she tells Rachel that she's got a purple puffy face, and the other girls call her weirdo, and they say something else to her, like she's a freak or something. She thinks she's okay because she's just being a friend. I mean, she does turn the desk around, which is hilarious, but she's being a friend in it. So the point of that is, of both these characters, is they've already learned to deal with a bullying style situation, and we see it in it. Now, what's different about it is in Jean Kerwood's Redefining Normal or Critical Analysis of Disability in Young Adult Literature, she discusses how disabilities were viewed as a sign of evil or restricted to the character, like Moby Dick, Richard III, and Tiny Tim. I don't know how she worked that in. Then they turn to gain sentimentality and pity later on, those kind of disabled characters in literature. However, there's been a turn lately towards a contribution to society, building on strengths, showing the person acting on choices, depicting, expanding reciprocal relationships with others, and ensure that the characters with disabilities afford the same citizenship as others. That's all cool, and I get it, and it does. But the difference is, if you take the 3 books she talks about, let's look at Jerk, California. 6-year-old Simon has Tourette's. His stepfather makes him feel ashamed of his involuntary body movements. His teacher tells him he's too distracting. And throughout his childhood, Sam is told he's a freak and a monster. So he seeks refuge by running. And therein, he comes to terms with his Tourette's. So he doesn't know how to deal with it. But when he gets away, he does. Marcello in the real world. At the law firm, Marcello has autism, and he's trying to deal with people who he sees as cruel and dishonest. And it's through Jasmine help that he kind of learns to deal with people around him. So beforehand he got into it, he doesn't really know how to deal with this social status of bullying or of insulting, stuff like that. The 5 flavors of dumb, it takes Piper to change her clothes and to change everything else before she really starts to understand that she herself is a normal person and not different. I know Auggie, in a sense, sees himself, his outside is different, but not his inside is different. And she sees that Kaylee Sim, like the supermodel, perfect normal girl, has problems of her own that she's dealing with. And once she does change all this, it gives her agency. So my argument on here, and I hope I made some kind of point because I'm reaching up on 14 minutes, and I'm sure that's way too long, is that in our 2 books, we have 2 characters who have been dealing with their own sense of bullying up to this point. And in the other ones, from what we've seen, at least with these examples, they learn how to deal with the bullying. So it isn't something that they've been conditioned to deal with. So that's my argument. I hope it made some kind of sense. If not, please leave me comments on how I can fix it, and I just hope this thing uploads quickly because I'm gotta learn a poem real quick. So let me know if this works. Hopefully this is okay. Hopefully it all does well, and I look forward to seeing y'all's videos too.